Hello, this is Tom with 3BrothersRC, and we're going to do a little soldering demonstration to help those that might have trouble with soldering. I know it can be pretty difficult. Soldering is actually kind of an art, so we're going to give you some tips that's going to make it really easy, a lot simpler. First thing I want to go over is the equipment you need to have to solder, and the soldering iron. That's always the big question. What soldering iron to buy, how much do I spend? So I'm going to make this pretty simple. It doesn't have to be a lot. I picked this Weller up. It's a 30 watt iron, I think, at the local hardware store. It was like $16 and it works perfectly fine. It'll do just about anything you need to do in the RC world. So that's all you need for a soldering iron. And secondly is your solder, which I'm using a 6040 flux core solder. I know some people like to use the flux separately, and that's fine, but we're trying to make this as simple and easy as possible for somebody that may be learning how to solder. So again, a 6040 flux core wire is all you need. And then you'll need a cleaner for your tip. Some people use a wet sponge, but I like these brass inserts where you just take the tip and you work it in there a little bit and it gets it all clean. That works great, and you pick these up maybe at a hardware store or Amazon has them. And these solder stands work really well. This one has 4 alligator clips on it, and it helps hold the two pieces together, or whatever you want to use it for. It helps steady things. It really helps out a lot. Not necessary, but it just comes in handy. And the last thing I want to talk about is the tip, which is probably the most overlooked thing on about a soldering iron. And you want to use a thicker tip. So if your soldering iron has a flat tip or a real skinny tip, you want to get rid of that and get a thick tip for the soldering iron. You can probably see these. This is a real thick one, and this is like a medium thickness, but they're both pretty thick on the end. They don't go clear to a point, and that's very important because the thicker tips like this put more heat to the solder. It heats it up quicker, and for like doing motors and 10-12 gauge wires, it really is going to burn through a lot quicker, and that's real important to get a good clean solder hole. So anyway, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is plug in your soldering iron and let it sit. I usually let it try to sit 5 to 10 minutes to get the tip good and hot. Then once it's hot, it doesn't hurt to clean it in case anything has touched it when you stored it. So just make sure the tip's real nice and clean. And before anything else, you want to tin the it's called tinning the tip of the solder iron. So we'll just throw a little bit of solder on there like that, and then we're going to attach the this is 12 gauge high strand wire. We're going to attach this on the motor. So in order to do that, you need to solder the end of the wire that you're going to attach, and you need to solder this separately. So there's a little bit of solder on here already, but I'm going to show you how I do it. So once the tip's already hot, you already have tinned the edge of it, then you just put the solder down here like that. And a good rule of thumb is around 5 to 8 seconds. You don't want to leave the tip on the piece of metal for any longer than that, because you could actually damage the motor. These are pretty good leads. You shouldn't have to worry about it, but you know, if you got a bad soldering iron setup, you could have it on here a minute and still not melt it properly, yet you've desoldered the inside of the motor. So you have to be really careful with that. So we're just going to give this a good coat, kind of pull it up in there, let it burn in just a minute. See, it's nice and filled in now. So we can do that with all 3 of these. Let it fill in just like that. You want a good little puddle in there, and make sure it it burns into the actual metal. So next thing we're going to do is expose the wire. Now there's no need to go clear back here. You need only like 5mm or less, just enough to get on there to make it clean. So some people use wire strippers. I just kind of be careful and rotate that around and then pull that back. See, it's just a short amount of wire. That's all you need just to fit on there. Any way we're going to do it, I'll probably do it this way so you can see better. And then I'll put it on the alligator clip to hold it for me. The next thing we're going to do is tin the end of the soldering iron again, like that. And then you want to touch both to the wire, and you want to work the solder in so it soaks clear into the wire. And you can do it front and rear. You should be able to touch the solder to the top, and it should pull all the way through like that. Okay, so once you've got your wire soaked all the way through with solder, then we can put it down here to the motor. And you can do this without one of these holders, but it makes it a lot easier with the holder on there. Hopefully this is going to come together on the camera. So we clean the tip off again just to make sure we got no imperfections in there that'll contaminate the solder. Then put some solder on the end like that. Get a good little puddle there. Now we're just going to touch it to the top and let it burn all the way through, and it'll actually sink down in that little slot when it's hot enough. So it shouldn't be over 10 seconds. Now it's soaking down in, just like that. So see, it was only on there for about 5 seconds and it burnt all the way in. So we're going to clean the tip off again. And hopefully you can see that it burnt clear and to the solder all the way around. Nice solid connection, no problem at all. You can even put a little more solder in the divot here to give it even further covering around, but that's not going anywhere. That's a real good connection, and it's just as simple as that. Again, the most important thing is to keep the tip clean with a good, I prefer brass. Some people use a sponge, wet sponge, but I like the brass. And I've been using this tip forever. I mean, almost a year on the same tip. So as long as you keep it clean and you have the right tip, again, you want a thick one like this one or this one. You don't want a pointed one for a big job like this with these heavy wires. So it's just as simple as that. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Again, this is probably 15-16 bucks at the hardware store. And just buy you some 60-40 flux core solder and a good brush cleaner off of Amazon or wherever you like, and it's as simple as that, and you get good connections. The main thing is just keep the tip clean, and always coat both sides you're going to put together. Coat them separately, then push them together like we did here. Piece of cake. Thanks for watching.